Welcome to Matters Financial and Geopolitical from a Frontier, and thanks again for stopping by. I do appreciate it. Um, my home thoughts start with Robin Williams, and I'm going to put up a link to a piece from Good Morning Vietnam. And this little trailer starts. Picture a man going on a journey beyond sight and sound. Listen to it, it's on Rich Wrap-Ups. And then ITV News tweeted, "You alone will have the stars. I'll try to keep looking up." And that was his daughter Zelda in a post after his death, which took me to Hunter S. Thompson. And life should not be a journey to the grave with the intention of arriving safely in a pretty and well-preserved body, but rather to skid in broadside in a cloud of smoke, thoroughly used up, totally worn out, and loudly proclaiming, "Wow, what a ride." Political reflections. NATO sees a high probability of Russian invasion as Ukraine troops close on Donetsk. Kiev said it was in the final stages of recapturing Donetsk, by far the biggest city under the control of the pro-Russian rebels. The battle for the city could be a decisive turning point in a conflict which has caused the biggest confrontation between Russia and the West since the Cold War. An industrial metropolis with a pre-war population of nearly 1 million. The main rebel-held redoubt rocked to the crash of shells and gunfire over the weekend, and heavy guns boomed through the night into Monday from the outskirts of the city. Ukraine appears to be pressing ahead with its offensive, undeterred by the presence of what NATO says are some 20,000 Russian troops massed on the nearby border for a potential ground invasion. Asked in a Reuters interview how high he rated the chances of Russian military intervention, Rasmussen said, "There is a high probability. We see the Russians developing the narrative and the pretext for such an operation under the guise of a humanitarian operation, and we see a military build-up that could be used to conduct such illegal military operations in Ukraine." That's Rasmussen. And eastern Ukraine has rapidly descended into becoming an ungoverned space. Call me old-fashioned or call me what you will, but I think it's NATO who's pressed the situation right up against Putin's border, not Putin pressing it against NATO's border, if there was such a thing. But clearly, I think the Ukrainian government probably will land a decisive military blow. I think for Putin to step in at this point in time would be probably showing too much of his hand, and would probably call for a response, which I don't think Putin is going to be ready to give. Fidel Castro has written a fascinating piece in Counterpunch, a repugnant new form of fascism. A just idea in the depth of a cave is stronger than an army. I thought that was pretty powerful. The human species is living in an unprecedented stage of history, a crash between military planes or warships, which are closely watched, or other similar events could unleash a conflict with the use of sophisticated modern weapons, which could become the last known adventure of Homo sapiens. Blaming the Russian Federation for the in-flight destruction of the Malaysian airplane is a stunning oversimplification. Not Vladimir Putin nor Sergei Lavrov or any other leader of this government would ever come up with such nonsense. 26 million people died in the defense of their homeland against the Nazis, Chinese combatants, men and women, inheritors of a millennial culture, are people of uncommon intelligence and an invincible spirit of struggle. Fidel Castro still. Xi Jinping is one of the strongest and most capable revolutionary leaders I have met in my life, it said. I'll put up a photograph of the then President Fidel Castro smiling as he smokes a cigar during a press conference. The death toll from the worst ever outbreak of Ebola has reached 1,013 after another 52 people died in the 3 days to August 9 in 3 West African countries, the World Health Organization said on Monday. And I concluded with that quote from the Nobel Prize-winning biologist Joshua Lederberg, who once wrote, "The single biggest threat to man's continued dominance on this planet is the virus." Tristan McConnell tweeted a photograph from the Ebola zone. I'll put that up. And then another photograph of a dead body, which according to the Islamic State fighters was a member of forces loyal to Syria's President Bashar al-Assad, lies at the Army's 17th Division base, August 10, 2014. I read an article in Asia Times, and the quote was, "Military hammer makes everything look like a nail." And then a very interesting piece in Business Week. Qatar's dangerous game, Switzerland of the Gulf, patron of the Islamists. Has Qatar overplayed its hand? The emirate with 300,000 citizens who enjoy the highest per capita GDP in the world has a reputation as the Switzerland of the Persian Gulf, small, wealthy, dogged about maintaining good relations with its quarrelsome neighbors. Qatar has strong ties with Iran, with which it shares a massive offshore gas field, hosts CENTCOM, the US military's central command in the Middle East. After the Oslo Accords in 1996, Qatar became the first Gulf state to establish trade ties with Israel. Its dexterity is being challenged, driven by ideology or opportunity, it isn't clear which. Qatar's former emir and his son, who took over the throne in June 2013, have cast their lot with some of the radical Islamist groups that have roiled the region since the Arab Spring revolts broke out in 2010. Qatar's support for militants has angered its neighboring conservative monarchies in the Gulf Cooperation Council, notably Saudi Arabia, the UAE and Bahrain, but Qatar doesn't seem to care. Qatar funds and arms Islamists fighting Syrian President Bashar Assad, bankrolls Hamas in the Gaza Strip. It let other extremist groups raise money in Qatar, according to the US Treasury Department. Qatar backed the Muslim Brotherhood and President Mohammed Morsi in Egypt before the Egyptian military deposed that nation's first democratically elected leader and declared the Muslim Brotherhood illegal. And last month, when Qatar tried to broker a ceasefire in Gaza, the effort was angrily slapped down by Egypt and Israel. And if you listen to the language coming out of Egypt and the cases against the Al Jazeera and a comment made by Lieberman, you'll see there's this remarkable confluence between Egypt and Israel in the matter of Qatar. And I suspect that they're espousing the Saudi view as well. And last month, when Qatar tried to broker a ceasefire in Gaza, the effort was angrily slapped down by Egypt and Israel, who thought the Qataris were trying to help Hamas win concessions through violence. Above all, it boils down to the pragmatic search for autonomy in policy making, says Christian Coates of Rice University, Qatar. Qatar seeks to balance ties among competing interests, he says, to avoid becoming too entangled with anyone. It has always been a haven for political exiles, including leaders of Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, which has helped keep these groups from stirring up trouble among Qataris. Today, Qatar is on the defensive. They made a huge gamble and lost with the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt. Perhaps Islam will shape the region someday and the bet will pay off, but in the short and medium term, powerful state actors don't see it that way and are ready to counter Qatar. The article concludes by saying petrodollar politics are never simple. On the 15th of August 2011, I wrote a piece, but obviously that was written before this very big bet was taken on the Islamists. And I said, Al Jazeera is a preeminent example of soft power in this 21st century of ours. Soft power is the ability to obtain what one wants through co-option and attraction. It can be contrasted with hard power, that is the use of coercion and payment. Subsequent to this article, Qatar embraced hard power. Soft power can be wielded not just by states, but by all actors in international politics, such as NGOs or international institutions. The idea of attraction as a form of power dates back to the ancient Chinese philosophers, such as Lao Tzu in the 7th century BC. And this is one of my favorite quotes. Water is fluid, soft and yielding, but water will wear away rock which is rigid and cannot yield. As a rule, whatever is fluid, soft and yielding will overcome whatever is rigid and hard. This is another paradox. What is soft is strong. And then Joseph Nye further developed it, and I said, there are about 250,000 Qataris, 300,000 I learn now, in a world of about 7 billion souls. And I said, that's considerably less than 0.1%. They tell me Al Jazeera is beamed into more than 200 million households, and I was making it's saying that for 300,000 souls to beam themselves into 200 million households is significant soft power. Currency markets, the euro 133.73 touched 133.33 on August 6th, which was the lowest since November the 8th. Dollar index 81.54. I'm expecting it to press on, in fact. Japanese yen 102.28. Swissy 0.9076. Pound now below 168, 167.64. Aussie 0.9262. Remember, not too long ago we were above 94. India rupee 61.14. South Korean won 10.2660. That's rallied overnight. The Rial 227.53. Egyptian pound 7.1508. South African rand 10.6531. I'll put up a 3-month chart of the dollar index. I think we're pushing forward, notwithstanding the fact that US 10-year note yielded 2.42%. Having touched 2.35% on August the 6th, which was the lowest since June 2013. Euro dollar touched a November low, but we're back at 133.73. Interesting piece on Bloomberg about sales of Jaguar and Land Rover in China, which is the world's largest car market, surged 61%. Profit of the luxury unit more than doubled to £693 million on demand for the F-Type convertible and Range Rover SUVs. Deliveries of Jaguar Land Rover climbed 22% to 115,596 vehicles in the quarter, bolstered by the F-Type that began shipping last year and the new and refreshed Range Rover lineup. The automaker's luxury unit is also building a mid-sized sports sedan called the XE, which it will unveil next month and will go on sale in 2015. I'm going to put up a YouTube link for Jaguar in the jungle when we took the F-Type to Lower and created a little bit of footage, which was a lot of fun. I'll put up a photograph of that F-Type on its way to Lower. And another link for Dr. Christian Turner, who was a terribly good sport and took a spin in the Jaguar F-Type one day, and a photograph of myself, which I sort of tweeted boys and their toys. It's a beautiful vehicle, I must admit, and I do enjoy it. Gold, 1306.145, we're above 1300. I still think we'll fall away to 1250, but obviously heightened, sharpened geopolitical concerns have lifted gold, as they always do. Crude oil, $97.80. I think it's a little bit of a buy here. The South African all share rallied very sharply on yesterday at 1.68% and is essentially 11.3866% higher in 2014. Not far off a record. I'll put up a photograph of the Johannesburg sunset taken 129 days ago. Dollar rand 10.6549, so not as weak as we've been, but we're still near the lower end of the range. Egyptian pound, yes, you guessed it, 7.15. Egyptian stock market surged 1.32%. It's now up 36.2% this year. And as I said in January, if the equity markets had a vote in Egypt, Army Chief General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi would actually get one of those impossible to believe votes of 99.8%. I'll put up a photograph of him seen in his office taken by Bloomberg. The Nigerian all-share fell 1.37% yesterday. It remains marginally higher in 2014, plus 1.6525%. Ghana Stock Exchange up 5.734% in 2014. And there's a statement by the IMF Deputy Managing Director Min Zhu on Ghana, basically saying that today the IMF management received a formal request from the Ghanaian authorities to initiate discussions on an economic program that could be supported by the IMF. The fund stands ready to help Ghana address the current economic challenges it is facing. We expect to send an IMF team to Ghana in early September to initiate discussions on the program. And then I saw this tweet. Apparently there are over 3,000 languages spoken natively in Africa. I was going through my TwitPics and I came across a photograph I'd taken at Christmas time of Westgate when it was bedecked with Christmas lights 1,702 days ago. I'll post that. Barclays reported first half profit after tax accelerated 13.424%. Loans and advances expanded 19.987%, so taking a more offensive position. What was interesting in point of fact was first half profit after tax was up 13.424%. First half earnings per share up 13%. But essentially there was a non-recurrence of an exceptional item. And if you strip that out, profits were largely unchanged. But if you because it was not repeated, you got this increase in profit. Jeremy Awori made some interesting comments. The banking industry is currently undergoing unprecedented disruption resultant from a highly dynamic market environment. We have therefore amplified our innovation agenda. Additionally, we have set up an investment banking arm, he said. I think that this Barclays Africa strategy is going to pay off, and there's going to be a strong network effect benefit for Barclays in Kenya. My piece over the weekend, which I wasn't able to read yesterday, Barack Obama, the Africa Summit has reset Kenya-US relationship, is what I wrote. Two photographs caught my attention last week. The first was the photograph of President Kenyatta being very graciously received by President Obama and the First Lady at the White House. And the second was of the President becoming an honorary Texan wearing a cowboy hat and clutching some rather fancy cowboy boots. On a tangential note, what is remarkable is the new now, where so much content is upstreamed in real time, distributed, curated, and amplified before mainstream media can filter. It's revolutionary and informs us why Israel has all of a sudden lost control of the narrative. The crowd is now the narrator, and it's happening in real time. Essentially, the news is being set ground up, whereas once it was being set up from the top down. Roland Barthes is well worth reading on photography and wrote, "One of the marks of our world is perhaps this reversal. We live according to a generalized image repertoire. Consider the United States, where everything is transformed into images. Only images exist and are produced and are consumed." The point I'm making is that the signal in the two photographs to which I referred was necessary and long overdue. President Kenyatta said, "I want to reassure you concerning a rumor going around the international public sphere that Kenya and my government have turned away from the West in favor of the East." He also said every time Kenya and the US have collaborated on any project, the world has witnessed spectacular success. I, for one, am pleased that we have reset our relations with the US. The US remains a key counter-terrorism partner, and in this regard, we need all the assistance we can get. Inward remittances from North America are no less than $500 million a year and seriously material. As I previously mentioned, the US bought $1.32 billion out of $2 billion of our Eurobonds. And most interestingly, I think President Obama, the Commander-in-Chief, has heard the demand signal emanating from the US corporate sector. And the US-Africa Summit might well mark an inflection point in the starting gun for a US economic surge across the continent. It is self-evidently in our national interest to surf this predicted surge. The Nairobi Securities Exchange rallied through Wednesday, setting a fresh all-time high before profit-taking set in. The NSE 20 crossed the 5,000 level for the first time since January 29th last week. The president spoke of issuing a samurai bond and further reducing the call on the local bond market to about 100 billion shillings. There is a lot of money that has gotten cozy parking itself in the local bond market. This money will have to find a new home. And I said, finally, we live in a multipolar world where our national interest is served by being globally fluent, by having as many potential partners with whom we can transact. The resetting of our relationship with the US is therefore important. I said, it's never going to be a linear thing, but those two photographs inform us that at least things might be a little less bumpy. I'll put up a photograph of the president and his cowboy hat. I'll put up a photograph of Roland, Barthes, who famously said every photograph is a certification of presence. And I thought to myself, that indeed rings true in the age of the selfie. And I'll put up a link for that song Midnight Cowboy that I like so much. John Voight was in the movie, and Nielsen Schmielsen sings the song. I also said the same thing to the Standard, where I said, the US-Kenya relationship is a singularly important one from the perspective of our national interest. I did complain that at times we'd gotten seriously provincial in our language and in our approach and diplomatic etiquette, and I hope now we can move beyond that. Kenya shilling was lost at 87.90. Nairobi all shares 12.9967 to the good this year, and 1.4488% below a record high set last Wednesday. NSE 20 is plus 18.86% this year and has closed above 5,000 since Wednesday. And that was the first time since January 29th. Please, if you haven't had a look at my interview with the East African breweries, Charles Island, have a look at that. That link's on the website, as is a link for the results release. I had a very big session yesterday, traded 2.125 million shares. And there's a lot of insights to be gained from that interview. Titus is going to chair the RVR board. Ahmed Heikel says to have such a seasoned and transformational business leader chair the RVR board is a big win for the company. I'll put up a link for Dr. Titus Naikuni's Mindspeak, where he spoke about his knowledge of the railways, amongst many other things. And I'll put up a link for an interview I did with Dr. Ahmed Heikel, who's now chairman of Kala Holdings, which was previously known as Citadel Capital. And I'll put up a photograph of that interview, and another photograph of the Mombasa-Nairobi Railway just outside the entrance to Stavo East, and another photograph of the railway crossing at Manyani Gate. CFC are saying that the Juba branch is going to be transformed into a subsidiary. CFC reported very strong full-year results. That link is also up on the website. Profit after tax accelerated 52.435%. I think that the market has completed a short bout of profit taking. Obviously, after the all-share hit a record, I think the NSE 20 stays above 5,000. I think we move higher on lower interest rates. Safaricom, very interesting research came out of UBS talking about how the M-Pesa business revenues have been growing at a compounded rate of 20% over the last 3 years, compared to 10 and 11% for Visa Card and MasterCard. And EBITDA revenues have been growing at even a faster pace, 29%, compared to, again, 10 and 11. Scan Group rebounded 3.72%. They reported turnaround half-year numbers, profit before tax accelerating 151%. Standard Chartered looks a cheap share to me. KCB, I think the price correction ended yesterday. It had hit a record high of 59, came all the way to 53.50, which is just below 10% on the bounce again. And then EABL had that very heavy session, firmed 0.673%, to close at 299. I thought those results showed plenty of growth. Tusker plus 17, Guinness plus 20, Reserve Spirits plus 60. We knew Senator was, we knew the Senator story. Bamburi Cement reported first half earnings, and of course, as I previously mentioned, are paying out 136.9% of their earnings per share as a dividend. Once again, thank you for stopping by. I do appreciate it. If you want to follow the stock market for real time, trading hours 9:30 to 3 o'clock Nairobi time, register on rich.co.ke, get a password. It's all free. If there's a problem, just email marmbithi@gmail.com, and we'll follow up from there. Once again, thank you for stopping by.